When the Gigabyte Gaming A16 came out, guys, we were super excited. A thin and light 16-inch gaming laptop with an RTX 4050 for $739. Sign me up. We're a Best Buy affiliate channel and we do get some vouchers to buy laptops, that's for our reviews. So I immediately used one to buy this laptop. Best Buy, they haven't reviewed this video or got involved in any way. I wouldn't have done this deal if they had. I just want to be transparent about how we got this laptop. Anyway, this is the first thin and light gaming laptop that costs less than $800 that just doesn't feel super cheap, and it can game reasonably well, at least on its display's 1920 by 1200 resolution. We ended up liking it so much that we reached out to Gigabyte to get their more expensive model with an RTX 5060. So this review, it's a bit of a 2-for-1. Now, since I value your time, I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing to find out what's going on here. I'm just going to tell you right now. If you buy the 4050 version on a sale, like we did, it is a great deal. But if you spend any more than say $800 on it, cracks definitely start to show. This laptop screen has bad color accuracy. Its ports are super far down the laptop and may get in your way, particularly if you're a left-hander. It also seems to have some weird bugs. Both our units have sluggish CPU performance, that's in everyday tasks. Even Best Buy's own tech insiders actually call out this issue in their reviews. And the RTX 5060 version, it woefully underperforms, making it an absolute no-go. That's at least right now. We have reached out to Gigabyte about both these issues, and if they are resolved with an update, we will pin a comment down below. So definitely check down there before watching the rest of this video. With that said, here's Sierra with our full review, then I'll be back at the end to talk about how these laptops, actually there's only one of them, stack up with others at this price point.
Let's start with CPU performance. In real-world use, both of our A16 laptops would sometimes feel sluggish doing day-to-day tasks in Windows. One example was slow game downloads from Steam. We noticed the CPU seemed to limit itself to around 2.4 GHz, not allowing itself to boost any higher and install the games more quickly. This was very strange, because during performance tasks such as Cinebench or gaming, the laptop boosted its CPU just fine and performed as expected. Even more strange was that the issue could be fixed by manually setting the app's priority to a higher setting in Task Manager, but this isn't something you should have to do. As far as benchmarks go, our two configurations have the same CPU and perform exactly the same in these tests, so we will only be showing one on our graph. In Geekbench, which tests a variety of common performance tasks, the A16 falls near the middle of comparable laptops. Better than its budget competition, also sporting 13th gen Intel CPUs, but worse than laptops with 14th gen HX, Zen 5, or Intel's Core chips. Moving over to Cinebench, we see the same pattern, but the A16's multi-core performance is still decent here. It also falls in the middle of the pack as far as power draw goes. It doesn't draw as much as the Alienware 16 Aurora feeds its similar Raptor Lake H CPU. We usually hope to see a lower performing CPU pay off in minimal heat and fan noise, but that isn't the case here. The 5060 model is the warmest on our list of comparable laptops, and the 4050 is the second warmest. We are thinking this might be because the 4050 version is pushing its fans a little harder than the 5060 version, as you can see in our fan noise graph. Switching over to GPU performance, we of course get a bit of a spread here as well. Looking at TimeSpy, the 4050 performs better than the lower wattage one in the thin, but the 5060 is now underfed wattage in comparison to the Strix G16's full wattage 5060, which performs the best here. Moving over to Port Royal, a ray tracing benchmark, it seems like the tier of GPU has more of an impact than just wattage here, as the Aero X16 and its 5070 pull ahead. When we move over to gaming performance, we are seeing some odd and inconsistent results. Starting with Cyberpunk with DLSS upscaling on and FrameGen off, the 5060 actually does worse than the 4050 here. Both perform on the lower end among these similar laptops, but the 5060 A16 is definitely underperforming what we would expect, considering it's being fed the same wattage as the better performing Nitro V16S. Something is clearly wrong with the 5060 version. Our tester Seth dove deep on this issue, but wasn't able to come up with a definitive root cause or solution. He tried different performance modes, hybrid versus DGPU mode, which did have a small impact, but nothing changed substantially in these results. The only thing we think might be causing it is the fact that the 5060 version is on an older BIOS than the 4050, but that version isn't eligible for the upgrade yet, according to Gigabyte's website. We also reached out to Gigabyte, but they are still investigating this issue internally. We'll make sure to pin a comment if it is resolved. When we turn FrameGen on, the results are a bit better for the 5060 version, but still not as good as the Aurora or Nitro, which it should be performing similarly to. When we look at Forza, these discrepancies are even worse. The 5060 version does significantly worse than all other 5060 laptops, and the similarly priced Gigabyte Aero with the 5070. Clearly, 120 FPS is very playable at high settings, but you might as well get the 4050. Here's a GPU utilization graph showing that the A16 with the 5060 is simply not using as much of the GPU as the Nitro's 5060 with the same wattage. This almost directly correlates with the lower frame rates, or FPS, in this game. Looking at our final game, Final Fantasy Dawntrail, the 4050 does surprisingly well here, coming close to the performance of the LOQ with the 5050. The 5060 version of the A16 continues to underperform. Unfortunately, both of the A16s get warm during performance tasks like gaming. The 4050 model especially heats up to 47 at the hottest place on its keyboard deck, while the 5060 only hits 45. This reinforces that the 5060 is not performing as well as it should, as that version should be hotter to the touch. The good news is that if you're only playing games that use the WASD keys, you're pretty much in the clear. It gets the warmest around the lower middle of the keyboard deck and spacebar instead, so your comfort would definitely depend on the kind of game you're playing. The fan noise is loud on both models, but not out of the ordinary for this class of laptop. In creative tasks using Puget's Premiere Pro benchmark, the 4050 model continues to lag behind while the 5060 version stays around the middle. Both perform well enough for video editing as long as your project is not overly complex. When we look at DaVinci Resolve instead, the 4050 falls behind a bit more and the 5060 actually pulls ahead a little bit. It's interesting to us how the 5060 gaming A16 performed as expected in these benchmarks, but fell behind in actual games. Very weird. Now, all of our benchmarks are run in the highest default performance mode, but what if you want a cooler keyboard deck or less fan noise? That's why we also do a breakdown of thermals and results in each different mode, so you can see what your other options are. Starting with the 4050 model in gaming, it seems like there's really no getting away from the warmer keyboard deck if you want to maintain performance. Luckily, as we said, it's mostly isolated to the lower middle and spacebar section of the keyboard, which is where your hands probably aren't. The fan noise is at least a bit better in balance mode, and the FPS only drops by 10%. You can also see here that the turbo fan mode doesn't do much at all. To us, it seems like that mode just keeps the fans ramped up the whole time, rather than going up and down with the needs of the laptop. For the 5060 version, it underperforms as we showed you. Weirdly enough, this one performs the best in balance mode, even though it draws significantly less power. This is once again probably because of the issue with the 5060. Switching over to CPU-only tasks, starting with the 4050 model again, we are seeing more reasonable keyboard temps in the higher gaming mode as the fans spin up more. If you want lower fan noise, balance mode would be a better bet, but you do see a drop in performance and a warmer keyboard deck. Looking at the 5060 version once again, it seems that balance mode is the best option on this model, even though its fans ramp up more than the 4050 version. The performance doesn't drop by much in this mode, the fan noise is minimal, and the keyboard deck stays the coolest. Let's now talk performance on battery, which is abysmal. When unplugged, the A16 is practically unusable. It's a gaming laptop, so some folks may not use it on battery at all, but this is still very limiting if you wanted to. Anything below a 500 Cinebench multicore score is what we would consider slow for day-to-day use. If you don't mind the slower performance on battery, it does last quite a long time, but we still wouldn't recommend it. The Aero A16 also lasts a long time on battery, and that one barely limits its performance at all while unplugged. Let's now take a look at the rest of the laptop, starting with the chassis. It feels sturdy enough and reasonably well built. There is some minor keyboard deck flex, and there is some screen flex. The keyboard deck and the top of the lid appear to have a satin finish, while the bezel and the bottom of the chassis are matte. This means the lid does pick up fingerprints, but they aren't very noticeable unless the light hits it just right. It has a black, understated style for a gaming laptop, which I tend to like, although the word gaming is stamped across the back edge of the laptop, which is also silly. Compared to the average gaming laptop, it is thinner, meaning that typing on it is a bit more comfortable than some thicker laptops. It also means that it's on the lighter side for a 16-inch. Not quite as light as the slightly thinner Aero A16, but still just under 5 pounds. It is also a little larger than the Aero A16, where the back of the laptop is a bit deeper. If you're buying the 4050 version, which is the one we recommend, we feel the chassis is a strong point. If you're buying a more expensive version, not so much. Let's now talk display. Compared to other budget gaming laptops like TUF or the LOQ, the gaming A16's colors are much worse. For $800, it's not horrible, but for over $1,000, it starts to be. The IPS display almost hits 400 nits of brightness and is a matte panel that will help avoid reflections. It has a resolution of 1920 by 1200 spread over 16 inches, which means its pixels per inch is 142. That means content on screen just doesn't look that sharp. That being said, this resolution is the correct pairing for the 4050 variant. If you are considering a more expensive variant, you can get a better screen for $1,000. The Aero X16, for example, has a higher resolution and has a much brighter panel. Back on the gaming A16, it has a 165Hz refresh rate, but unfortunately, it has some ghosting, which means fast-moving content might look a bit blurry. It also doesn't support Advanced Optimus or G-Sync, which is a bit disappointing. There is a mux switch, but you have to set it in the BIOS. Some positives on the screen are that we detected no PWM flickering and only minor backlight bleed in the top left corner, which is still not a huge positive. The keyboard is surprisingly nice on this laptop. It feels comfortable to type on, and it has a nice subtle click to it. The keys do feel a little low travel, but not more so than your average laptop keyboard. The layout is mostly standard, other than an additional Gmate button between F12 and the delete key at the top. The 4050 version features a single-color cyan backlight, while the 5060 version has single-zone RGB. Oddly enough, Seth and I both like the keyboard on the A16 better than the Aero X16 because it has less deck flex when you're typing. The Trackpad is a decent mechanical trackpad for a laptop at this price point. Tracking feels very smooth and is accurate with its soft touch coating. The trackpad does depress a lot in the left and right corners, which makes it feel cheap, but you don't lose that much accuracy. The click is also loud, which I don't like. One weird thing is that the sensitivity of this trackpad is a bit low. This means if you have a lighter touch or use the tip of your finger more than the pad of it, it can lose track of your fingertip. This happened to our tester Seth, which caused some mishaps on his end, but it did not happen to me or Josh. Definitely subjective. As far as the speakers go, our audio engineer described them as incredibly okay, which I think was accurate. They lack bass like most laptop speakers, and they sound a bit muffled. Vocals sounded pretty clear though, so that was nice. Take a listen. Here's how the 1080p webcam looks on the Gigabyte Gaming A16 in studio lighting. It also features Windows Hello. Here's how the Gaming A16's webcam looks with overhead lighting. The ports are pretty varied on the A16, but we don't love their placement further down the laptop and feel that cables may get in your way. This is especially the case for the proprietary barrel pin charger, which sticks straight out and might make the laptop more difficult to use for left-handers using a mouse. For the ports themselves, on the left we have the proprietary barrel pin charging port, a 1 gig Ethernet port, HDMI 2.1, 5 gigabit USB-A port, and a USB-C port that supports DisplayPort 1.4 and Power Delivery 3.0. On the right, we have another 5 gigabit USB-A port, an outdated USB-A port that only supports 2.0 speeds up to 480 megabits, and a headphone mic combo jack. It's disappointing that Power Delivery is only supported on the left side. For Linux, we booted up Fedora 42, and everything worked. Keyboard, trackpad, volume up and down, webcam, etc. For upgradability, this laptop does very well. It has 2 full-size SSD slots and 2 upgradable RAM slots. Our 4050 version had 1 slot filled since it only had 16 gigs of RAM, and our 5060 had both with 32. I like this approach as it's cheaper to upgrade yourself as you can just buy 1 stick. And since these are DDR5, each stick is already dual channel. Rounding out upgradability, the Wi-Fi 6E card and battery are also replaceable. Back to you, Josh.
So here's where we land. If you can find the 4050 version on sale for under $800 like we did, then the Gigabyte Gaming A16 is a fantastic laptop. I'd actually buy it. Make sure to set a price drop notification on our website, bestlaptop.deals, to catch sales like this one. If you are looking at a more expensive model though, we don't think it's worth it. The screen's colours are rough, and as we showed you, there seems to be a major performance issue with the 5060 model. Instead, we'd recommend you buy Gigabyte's own Aero X16. It's an even thinner and lighter laptop with a better 16-inch display. It has better colours and a higher resolution. It also has a more efficient current-gen AMD Ryzen 7 Zen 5 processor, and its high-tier GPUs, they actually perform as expected. I've already done a full review of that laptop, which I will link down below. If you want to veer for a more gaming-orientated one, the Legion 5i, guys, it is just fantastic. A high-quality build than both of these Gigabytes, a stunning OLED display, and a super comfortable keyboard. Links to all these laptops and a couple of others that we do recommend will be below this video. That's all from us. Till next time, go do something awesome with your day, and I will catch you later.